It says that we're recording. Are we recording? Do you see it recording?
No, you're the host. You have information I don't have.
Oh, you can't. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just wasting time now. This is me just vamping. Hi
Oh,
everyone.
wait, it does say recording.
Yay! We're very technically savvy here. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the 11th annual Creative Conference. My name is Suehyla El-Attar. I am not important. I am just the vehicle of which is presenting you Topher Payne. And Topher Payne is a playwright, a director, an actor, and also a screenwriter. And we're going to get into all of that. Mostly, I'm correct in saying that you've mainly written for Hallmark. Is that correct?
Yeah, everything that's been produced thus far has been for the Hallmark Channel.
Okay, and we're going to go through this journey. And I think one of the things that I want to preface, first of all, is would you consider your journey a unicorn journey or the average experience?
I feel like it's a very blue collar writer kind of experience generally.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then,
No, I don't think there's anything fancy about what I'm sorry, I have to move this cat. But
I mean, good for you, man.
I feel like a Bond villain over here. But no, I don't think there's anything fancy or unique about the experience that I had transferring from theater to television at all.
Okay. All right. So let's dive in. I know. See, here's the deal. So to give everyone a history, Topher and I have known each other for years.
A little while.
And as a matter of fact, I was just reminded because we actually spent most of those years not remembering how we met until Topher finally had the memory that he met me at Horizon Theater's Atlanta Stories event where he was a playwright and I was a playwright and we were both doing stuff and I met him. I'm not going to lie. I'm engaged happily now, but I'm not going to lie. I met him, 20 years ago and was like, oh, he is cute. And then found out that you're gay and was like, I have no use for you. And promptly forgot that I met you so that when we met later on, I just met you all over again with more knowledge of who you were and things that were just not capable between us. So so instead, I'll just go ahead and put that all out there. And so instead, I think that I don't know. I almost feel like you pursued me professionally, and then we got closer through our professional relationship, and now we're you're one of my best friends.
Yeah, I know, which is really weird for me in this because it's like I haven't had the experience of being interviewed by someone who like knows the depths of my imposter syndrome.
Not only knows the depths of the imposter syndrome, but also will know the pattern of you going into interview mode and not let it happen.
That's really interesting, Suehyla. I appreciate you saying that.
Oh God. Okay. Let's go. So let's go ahead and let's do the tropes that you do through interviews.
Sure.
You normally get. All right, go ahead.
I was born and raised in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. My father worked for the post office. My mother was an office products HR director for a Tapco Globe Weiss. My first exposure to live performance was in the drama program at First United Methodist Church. I played a sparrow in a play called Jesus Ain't Just for the Birds. And he ain't. And then my Aunt Patricia introduced me to full-scale live performance when she took me to the Kennedy Center when she was going to a medical conference, and I saw Guys and Dolls. And
what is the age span from?
I was 11. Well, I was 4 when I did my first stage performance, and then I was 11 when I saw Guys and Dolls. And I was hooked that night. I did not fully appreciate until I saw Guys and Dolls that you could pursue writing stories to be performed in front of an audience as a career. I knew movies and TV. I knew people wrote movies and TV. But Guys and Dolls, that changed everything, which is funny because now I don't particularly care for the show, but but that also
not all of us really loved our first.
Yeah.
We didn't love it. Yeah.
Well, and it served as a pattern that has followed throughout my entire writing career of often I am inspired by wanting to write something better than what I'm seeing.
And I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so you do Guys and Dolls at 11, at the age of 11. And so then what happens next?
After that, there wasn't really any kind of performing arts program in Kosciuszko City Schools. You know, they did the junior senior play, and there would usually be some kind of stage show for the Natchez Trace Festival every April. And so I would always be a part of that, but my professional career properly started when I showed up on the steps of New Stage Theater in Jackson, Mississippi, and said, I will do.
Which is the only professional theater company in Mississippi. Like that,
Yeah.
because I am also Mississippi. So yes.
And so that's where people get paid to do plays. And it was the only place in the state where they did. And so I showed up and said, I will do anything. And they asked if I was afraid of heights, and that's how I became an electrician. And I started a technical internship. I spent a season there working in the scene shop, learning stage management, learning costuming, scenic painting, all this stuff that I still use, 20 years later. And then the second year, they put me in their arts and education tours, and we toured all around Mississippi with children's theater. And after 2 years of that, when I was 19, I had enough of a resume to go to SETC, the Southeastern Theater Conference, and booked a gig with Kaiser Permanente's educational theater program. That brought me to Atlanta, and here I remain.
And all of this as an actor, correct? Like none of this was as writing.
No, none of this was, I was writing throughout. I always had. But yeah, I had my first show produced at New Stage when I was still an intern there. I built the set. They gave me 4x8 platforms, and I put them up in the reception hall, the Hughes room, and produced my own first show there, called Home Fires Burning.
What was it about?
It was about 3 adult offspring returning home for Thanksgiving to their father and his new girlfriend.
When you say 3, because I feel like this is going to play heavily. When you say 3 adult offspring, what are the genders of the offspring?
1 male, 2 female.
Okay. And you yourself in your family, you are one of 2 children?
Yeah, I have an older sister.
Okay. So you get CTC, you're doing Kaiser Permanente and writing full time. What was it like to watch your play go up at New Stage?
Wonderful. I'm so grateful because that one, as well as my next one, Chip Jennings and the Meaning of It All, about a 12-year-old boy approaching his 13th birthday and realizing he's running out of time to be a child prodigy, because there's no such thing as a teenage prodigy. And so he's searching for the meaning of life before he turns 13. And my grandmother got to see those shows. And those were the only ones she got to see. And because we lost her right after I got back from SETC. And my formal education ended after the 10th grade, when I showed up at New Stage at 17. And everyone in the family was very concerned about the career path that I had just sort of announced, and apparently was very angry with Aunt Patricia for encouraging it, and convinced I was going to go back to high school, at least, to the Ed Center and get my GED or whatever,
Right.
maybe do some community college. And I chose to get my training exclusively through apprenticeship. And the shows at New Stage, God, I hadn't thought about this. The shows at New Stage proved what I intended to do.
Yeah. And also, that's the deal. I wonder if for your family, so many people out there that are like, I'm going to be a writer, right? And
Mhm.
you want to do it and also suck at it, no matter how much you want to do it, no matter how much technical prowess you get. Right? I mean, the fact is that you're good at what you do, and you see it, then your family could.
I think, I mean, because, I can't, I feel like anything more than 3 years old of mine feels like it was written by somebody else that was trying really hard. Um, but I, I think if anything is evident in the earliest stuff that I was generating was that desire to communicate, that desire to connect to an audience. Um, uh, the thing that I always ask whenever I see a play or whenever I watch a movie, why have you asked for my time?
Right, right.
I just, and I don't make a life out of dogging other people's work, but I just watched a miniseries that or a limited series, I guess we call them now. And it was 6 episodes, and I still don't know why they asked for my time. Um, I really have no idea. And it was really frustrating because I gave them so much of it. And I thought, surely with these people involved, we're going somewhere with this. And then ultimately, I am still left with a lot of questions about why they asked for my time. But the great thing about learning through apprenticeship was when I decided I wanted to communicate with an audience, I had the skill set to build my set, hang my lights, make the costumes, cast the show, do the props, and just kind of do this one-man band of this is how we do a play. And that came from the generous mentorship of everybody I was working under.
Uh, that brings to memory for me something that, of course, I know is a personal story, which is that I think recently you, because I have known you, and I do remember years of watching you put on Topher Payne shows. They were full on Topher Payne shows. You were always involved with either building the set, either doing the costumes, standing over, and you and I have a total pull away on this. You love to direct your own work, right? And I
Never the
remember
world
you
premiere,
told
but yes.
right.
Yeah.
Never the world premiere so that you can see the full interpretation and then take it from there. But you told me that you came across videotapes of you, think in your, you were like, I don't remember, like 14, something like that.
Uh-huh.
And directing your own plays at that time in like the garage.
Yeah, directing my cousins. My mother comes from a very, very large family, and I am one of the youngest of 21 first cousins on that side of the family, which means during the holidays, I had a lot of casting options. And so I would write in anticipation of we're going to have family here and I can make a movie. And my father bought me Video Toaster, this like very, very early kind of like ancestor of Final Cut. Um and and I had seen the edited versions before. I'm not in those. I don't appear in those. I was writing and directing. And those are charming because I'm just watching all of my cousins. My parents found and transferred to DVD the raw footage, and I heard myself directing.
So, so I just want to make sure I'm totally tracking this. You wrote the script knowing who was coming. You
Hmm.
know exactly where they're all going to be placed. You have
Hmm.
the vision, and you guys, you have to understand something about Topher. Like when he has something in mind, it is what will happen. So
Hmm.
you've got that vision, and so you're directing. How would you encompass the description of your directing at this point in time?
I would say unafraid of expressing dissatisfaction. Um, I didn't have a lot of nuance in working with performers who seem to be craving direction. Um, and um, and I have run across this on a lot of sets since then. So I know some people don't grow out of it. They are craving direction, and you are prioritizing letting them know how frustrated you are with the fact that they are craving direction. And so you reach an impasse creatively, and before everyone sits down for Thanksgiving dinner. And but
Perfect timing. It's politics when you can just have creative differences. That's great. Well, here's something so that I thought was interesting. You said you knew you could make a movie, but all of your actions seem to have been directed toward live theater. But
Mhm.
did you ever have the goal from going? Did you did you ever have the goal from becoming a playwright to being a screenwriter, or were you just going to be fine being a playwright?
I 2013 was a big breakthrough year for me as a playwright.
Let's go
And
into that.
Mhm.
Let's actually talk about that and back up, because
Mhm.
you did a lot of you have over 20 productions that were done at smaller theaters here in Atlanta,
Mhm.
right? And then one of your bigger productions to a larger theater would be Swell Party.
Yeah,
That was 2012.
that was
And then you
2013.
did, oh yeah, that's 2013 to rehearsal 12. 2013 world premiered in January. And then you put that up right after that with A Bags, 7 stages.
Mhm.
Now, in the midst of all of that, you had another script called Perfect Arrangement. And what had happened that?
Perfect Arrangement had been originally produced by the Process Theater Company, a small company that was operating out of a space on Spring Street when it was produced in 2009. Um, I had set the script aside. I knew that it wasn't done with me, but I needed to let that one bake for a little while, which happens sometimes. Like it's as though you need a little more lived experience before you come back as a storyteller on that one. And in 2013, um, through the recommendation of Gabriel Jason Dean, um, Perfect Arrangement was picked up by the Source Festival in DC. And I was given a workshop on that in March and then a full production in July.
Do you mind giving us a summary of Perfect Arrangement?
Perfect Arrangement is inspired by true events called the Lavender Scare in the early 1950s, as an extension of the Red Scare. The federal government declared employees who as security risks who were deviants, loose women, or alcoholics, deviants being the official euphemism for homosexuals. And in Perfect Arrangement, you have a gay couple and a lesbian couple. One of the men and one of the women work for the State Department. They have married each other's respective partners and live in adjoining townhomes connected by a closet. And it employs it's if you liked WandaVision, it employs all of the 1950s sitcom tropes to comment on um, a life of presenting. And and then we just deconstruct and deconstruct and deconstruct until everything is all in tatters. And so it's just the most delightful and charming and well costumed play about homophobia I think you'll ever find. And
And
as a playwright, everything comes down to the right person seeing it at the right time. That's what makes the difference. And Perfect Arrangement was being produced in DC when DOMA was struck down by the Supreme Court. And the Washington Post ran a story connecting the two. that just down the street from the US Supreme Court building, here's a play about federal employees and what they went through in the 1950s. And that attracted the interest of commercial producers from New York who came and saw it. Jim Comey came and saw it. He was very tall. He had to sit in the back. And the play got discovered. And within 18 months, we were off Broadway.
So, well, here's a question. Was that the first time that you had a production out of state?
Yes, ma'am.
Your first production out of state?
Yes, ma'am. My first professional production. I'd had avocational productions in the past.
How many years are we into your career at this point in time with your first production out of state? And you've not been published yet. Nothing like that has happened.
13 years.
13 years. Okay.
13 years from first professional production to first production outside of Atlanta.
How did you know in your brain it was discovered?
When the New York producers called. And said, we would love to talk to your agent, and I didn't have one. But my friend Sean Daniels, the artistic director of the Arizona Theater Company now, was with Dad's Garage when I first moved to town. And Sean had an agent, and I called Sean because he was the only person I knew who had an agent that represented playwrights. That's not true. I also knew Lauren Gunderson, and I ended up at Lauren Gunderson's agency. And so Sean's agent agreed to negotiate with the New York commercial producers if it amounted to anything. And then it did. And I signed with Gersh, and I was with Gersh until the beginning of last year.
Okay, so now, so this is all kind of like, and in the midst of all of this, I think that one of the things that I'd like to point out is first production out of town, which also had a different effect because it's different theater critics that are coming to see the show.
Oh, yeah, and that was the thing that made the difference.
Right, and because of that, this little show, Perfect Arrangement, was nominated for. Please remind me.
It won the Osborne Award from the American Theater Critics Association, ironically, given my past relationship with critics, and then was nominated for a Lambda Literary Award, and yeah, which like they give to like real authors, and so again, the imposter syndrome really was kicking in hard on that one.
And this was in 18, so like literally, 2013, and I can even say there was something I saw different in your writing when we looked at Swell Party. So it's interesting to me that you had set Perfect Arrangement down, and then you went to Swell Party, which was a take on historical fiction of Reynolds family, and then you had this other play that came out of you called Angry Fags. All of that is happening while Perfect Arrangement is like.
Here's the thing that I wanted to really make the distinction on there, because Swell Party and Angry Fags were breakthrough scripts for me creatively, both for very, very different reasons. But the beginning of 2013 was when I decided that I was going to allow Atlanta to be enough. I'd had a dozen years of trying to get produced out of town, and I was so tired of submitting and getting turned down over and over and over. And meanwhile, I had wonderful relationships with artistic directors and producers and directors and actors in Atlanta, and I loved telling stories with those people. And I had a good day job. I made the postcards for strip clubs that people put on your windshield when you go to Kroger. And that's me. Every time it rains and you end up with wet paper on your windshield, it was this guy. And but I really liked my day job. I liked airbrushing strippers. And I got to tell stories at night with people that I love telling stories with. And so instead of focusing on trying to get it out there, trying to hustle out of the city, thinking of whether I should leave the city and go to New York or go to Chicago or go someplace else and try to hustle there. I just embraced the fact that I was very happy telling stories here, and my stories got so much better immediately.
Why do you think that is? Do you think you weren't distracting yourself anymore?
I think so. I was really looking forward to. That's when I started having conversations with individual actors saying, you know, I have no control over whether or not you're going to get cast, but please know that you have inspired me creatively and your voice is influencing this work. And I had a posse. And the specificity of their voices was making me better.
I think I always find that fascinating that because I remember you saying that when you were writing plays, you can get the general idea of what you want to have happen with your characters. And then when you can start to picture the actor that you would dream of playing that role, it helps you develop the voice of that character even more.
Yeah.
And I guess
it sets perimeters. It sets perimeters. And successful storytelling is always about setting perimeters. If you don't, and this isn't talking smack, if you don't, you're Ryan Murphy. You're Ryan Murphy coming up with a brilliant concept that works for the first 3 episodes, and then you keep expanding and expanding and expanding so that by episode 8, that thing has gone off the rails because you didn't set specific perimeters for your storytelling.
Right. Boundaries, ladies and gentlemen.
Boundaries.
The story is boundaries. And
super healthy.
Yeah. So keeping so much is happening in 2013. It's literally this like
it was the year. Yeah. And I got better. And because as a writer.
Yeah.
And because I got better as a writer, when I revisited Perfect Arrangement, I was approaching with a completely different level of confidence. It wasn't just that I loved storytelling. It was that I genuinely believed I am good at this.
Right.
And I know what I need to do to make this work for me. And I would always envision the audience that I was trying to reach.
Okay.
And so Perfect Arrangement became so much more essential to me personally. And everything happened very quickly.
Yes. So take us through that timeline. So let's give months. Perfect Arrangement opened when? New producers called when? Agent got hired when? How did this go?
Okay. Perfect Arrangement opened in DC in June of 2013.
Okay.
The run ended up getting extended. It was the first time the Source Festival had ever extended a production. And so, and the other 2 plays were wonderful in the festival, but the extension was Perfect Arrangement. And so the festival closed and Perfect Arrangement kept going. And then the commercial producers contacted while it was still running, so that would have been in July or early August. We went through several different possibilities of production. I distinctly remember one fell through on Thanksgiving Day. I just remember taking that call on my boyfriend's balcony while I had food in the oven. And then 2014, there was a lengthy period where we heard nothing. But that was fine because I had another show coming up in January of 14 at Georgia Ensemble. And so I was focused on that, getting Only Light in Reno ready. And then by the end of 2014, they had found that a play that was scheduled to run at primary stages in fall of 2015 was not going to be ready. Okay. So they were moving it on the calendar. and there was a slot available for a show, and my commercial producers pounced. And they said, we have a script that's ready to go into rehearsal now. And the only reason that it was ready to go in rehearsal now is because of the avocational cast from the Process Theater production and the time they put in on it, and then the severely underpaid cast of the Source production. The generosity of all of these people putting in on the development of a new work meant that when an off-Broadway house needed a show, we had one ready.
Okay, so we're talking, let's, again, Perfect Arrangement was conceived in what year?
Originally conceived in 2000, started in 2008, premiered in 2009.
Okay, and then we jump to 2013 and it gets a second life where you have a different approach to writing and you feel more mature. And then in 2015, it gets an off-Broadway production.
Yeah.
You have acquired an agent in the midst of this simply because you had a production ready to go before anything else. Have you had anything published at that point?
No.
Okay. How did we get from off-Broadway to Hallmark?
A manager, Scott Halley with Gramercy Park Entertainment, read the New York Times review of Perfect Arrangement and contacted Primary Stages, the producer of the show, and asked for my agent's contact information. And thankfully, by that point, I'd had one for a few weeks. And Scott introduced himself and said he'd read the script, he read the reviews, and he thought I had a great voice for television, specifically because so much of Perfect Arrangement is steeped in 3-camera sitcom format.
But how does he know this? I mean, he's only reading the review.
He asked for the play. He asked for the script.
Okay.
And watched the the little press pack that they send out of cuts of scenes from the show, so he was able to see a little bit of the production, and because of the structure of Perfect Arrangement, he thought I'd be a natural fit to start pitching for sitcom writers' rooms.
Okay, so now coming to you now, what are you thinking? Like, I asked you to take us onto this journey. I was like, did you ever think you would write for movies, even though you were playing around with it as a bossy little 12-year-old? Did you ever think you would go to television? We're not even in movies yet. We're just television.
Because of the evolution of Atlanta, yes. When I moved to Atlanta in, God help me, 1999, I would not have imagined moving into television because that would not be a viable option for someone based in Atlanta. There were, basically like 4 artists we knew that were working consistently in TV. But Atlanta changed a whole lot over those 15 years.
Yeah.
And so by the time Scott came calling and said, I'd love to pitch you for a writer's room. And I said, that sounds wonderful. I'm not leaving Atlanta unless I have a job, because I was raised by working class Mississippians. I'm not moving to the West Coast without a job. That's silly to me.
That's true. I just realized, I was like, but you moved to Atlanta, but you moved to Atlanta when you had a job secured with
Exactly.
So you've never just done the leap. You've never been like, I'll just get here and we'll see what happens. Never done that.
Nope.
Yeah. Okay. I think I missed that, but okay, great. So you say this to Scott. I'm so chomping at the bit because I know about little details about when he said writer's room. I'm just going to be stupid here. Did you know what he meant? Were there terms that he was using that you were like?
I pictured the gang on the Dick Van Dyke Show. I think I'm like, oh, so it'd be like the Maury Amsterdam in this scenario. Sure, but that's effectively what I was picturing, was like an office setup with like 3 desks, and we just pound out this week's episode. Beyond that, I hadn't done a lot of studying on exactly how these things come together. Um,
How did you do this? Like he goes, I want to start pitching it for, and did you just go, I know everything you're saying?
um, uh, Often, and this came in really handy later, once I actually had jobs, um, I would just Google as he was speaking. I would.
He's still your manager, right?
Yes,
Does
yes.
he know that?
And one of my dearest friends. Yes.
And does he know that that's what you were doing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It was, I told him, I told him when I was offered my first gig. I said, you have to understand that in our first few conversations, I was Googling things as you were talking. And Scott basically said, well, then that's about to serve you really well. Because you need to do the exact same thing when you get producer's notes. And so he invited me to come out to LA, and he was going to set up look-see meetings, which is exactly what it sounds like. They look at you, they see what you have to offer, they send you away.
What are you walking in with though? I mean, here's the deal. You only have plays. I can't imagine that LA is greatly impressed with playwrights. So what are you walking in to go, hey, look, see at this?
In my experience, they are very impressed with playwrights.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at me
And
assuming things. I won't.
yeah. I think that's a fallacy that I would love to break down is stop thinking you need to know how to do a pitch deck. Stop thinking that you need to present in some sort of rigid, structured way, and of course, 10th grade education. So take my advice for what it will. But what they want are storytellers. They want experienced storytellers who can deliver on what they're pitching. They understand that structurally you may have something that you need to learn. But if you're an experienced storyteller, the transition into television is all logistics. It's all logistics.
Yeah, I'm so hesitant because I'm hearing what you're saying, and then for a moment it feels like it starts to dive into that trap of like what happens with actors, right? This is the only industry where anybody thinks that they can just walk in and do it.
That's why I say experienced storytellers.
Got it.
People with professional experience storytelling. My mother is an amazing storyteller. I would not make her the showrunner on anything. But now that I think of it, she'd actually probably be delightful. But it's just like any other professional field where you learn the essentials and then you learn your area of specialization.
Okay.
Your area of specialization may be writing short stories. It may be essay. It may be poetry. It may be plays. If it's plays, you're in luck because what you're doing is dialogue based, and that's going to transfer really well.
Right.
People who have a background in fiction can sometimes have a harder transition into writing scripts. But I think they've got a leg up because they're used to being extraordinarily descriptive in a way that playwrights have been trained to kind of eliminate in their work.
Right. And I was going to say, so here's the other part of it. You have to on the fly. So, okay. So Scott brings you out for look-see.
Yeah.
And you have, what do you have that you're showing them?
I have plays, and I have 8 pages of a spec that I've started.
What did you do? Did you just is it a spec for a series? Is it a spec for a TV movie?
No, it was a spec for a horror movie that I still think would be awesome. But I just needed to show 8 pages that I could do the format.
Okay. And how was that transition for you?
Weird. Scott kept encouraging me, just adapt something of my own. Just take one of your plays and adapt it into a film scene. I wrote the plays as plays. That's all I ever saw them as.
Right.
And so I needed to start fresh with what I was going to do as a sample. And my sample ended up being engaging enough to show, okay, he's got the basic idea here. But Scott set up 11 meetings for me, and I requested a 12th with the Hallmark Channel. And
okay. So wait, so I just want to let's back up for just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So he sets up meetings and he's like, I'm going to get you meetings with Netflix, HBO,
all your dreams. Yeah.
And hearing all of this. And then you said,
can I go to the Hallmark Channel?
And he said,
why?
And you said,
because my mother and sister have had those on a constant loop for like the last 6 years. Every time I go home to Christmas, I see these movies. They're talking to the same audience that I'm working with at Georgia Ensemble Theater, and I know how to write for them.
When you say that, what does that mean to you? And what are you pitching about yourself?
I'm pitching, I understand white, semi-conservative, certainly politically conservative, socially kind of moderate, people who are looking for a specific brand of escapism in entertainment.
Okay.
And I don't write escapist entertainment. If I ask for your time, it's for a reason. And thanks to Georgia Ensemble and doing 5 commissioned shows for them, I knew how to sneak the spinach into the mac and cheese. And I had cultivated such a wonderful relationship with, frankly, some really problematic people. And my form of activism was finding a way to very gently bring them forward.
Okay.
And I couldn't let go of the possibility, because Hallmark gets 4.5 million viewers on a first run of a movie. And I couldn't fathom having that kind of access. And I was also curious about some of the specifics of why they told stories the way they did. Mm-hmm. And I wanted, out of everybody that I was talking to on that trip to LA, and I had amazing conversations with people who tell stories for a living. And in every single one of them, all I wanted to do was find out why you tell the stories you tell, and why do you tell them the way that you do. But at Hallmark, I had specific questions. Can you go into them? Or do you? Yeah, well, I mean, it was moreover, what are you really trying to achieve here? What do you want for your audience? So you go into this meeting. Uh-huh. And although grateful to get the meeting, you walk in specifically asking them questions. Yeah. To get to know them better, rather than be the receiver of the questions of letting them. As opposed to every other interview I did where I was trying to make the best impression. Okay. And at Hallmark, I had questions for them and was challenging them. They pulled a second person into the meeting to address. And afterward, because I had had a meeting just prior to Hallmark that had not gone well at all. Okay. Because he was not a nice guy. You guys, big thing about Topher. Gotta be nice. You gotta be kind. You gotta be kind. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was not a kind person, and he did not respect his audience at all. And really made a joke of that fact. And just openly disrespecting his audience. And I just wanted to leave. And what was reassuring at Hallmark was they engaged. They absolutely engaged. And were very kind and very sensitive to the questions I had about representation, in terms of diversity in casting, in terms of telling stories that look like they take place still in an idealized world. I understand the brand,
Right.
but an idealized version of our world. And um and so I came out of that and knowing I probably didn't get the gig. I had already told him I had theater commitments that were going to take me through summer, but I'd be available for work in the fall. And my plan was to spend the summer practicing writing movies so that if work came my way in the fall, I'd be ready.
You're training. You're doing the Eye of the Tiger, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And my offer from Hallmark to write my first script came 6 days after that meeting. And they said, we know you said you weren't available till the fall. This was February. But we're replacing a writer on a project. This is, if you meant everything you said in the meeting, here's your opportunity to prove it.
And the first movie was
My Summer Prince.
My Summer Prince.
A royal movie. Yeah.
And how many have you done since then?
I have, I've worked on 7 total. And 5 have been produced, and 1 we're waiting on green light, hopefully this week. And then 1 I was removed because I was obstinate. I was a little brat. I did not get along with the producer. We had very different images for the movie. And finally, she said, if you want to leave and give us our money back, you can do that. And that's what I did.
Wow. I mean, it just takes me back to the garage. That's all. Little 12-year-old Topher who's like, fine.
No, I'm like, you're going to make a bad movie and you're trying to put my name on it. And like, that's my name. and the suggestion that was put in front of me was just take the producer's notes and take your name off of it and put a pseudonym up. You know, plenty of people write under a pen name. And I'm like, but no, you don't understand. I want to be proud of my movies. And so I left that project. It was made with another writer. I moved on to another movie where I met the producer that I've done my last 3 movies with. We fell madly in love. If I had stayed on that project I was not supposed to be on, I never would have met Angela Mancuso, and she's my favorite producer I've ever met. And she has made me so much better at this gig.
I love it. I mean, and I think you and I, the one thing, and I wonder if it's, I mean, we have 2 completely different backgrounds. You are Mississippi born and bred with long history of that and your relatives. And I come from not that, but was born and raised in Mississippi. And I feel like you and I find it so important to connect to the people that we do business with.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's being artistic, but it's hard to function on just a business communication.
Don't you find it interesting? You know, like Shonda Rhimes has a no assholes policy, but it was through learned experience, hard-earned experience that she established her no assholes policy. I think our industry would make greater strides much faster in a lot of areas if we just all adopt the no assholes policy across the board.
Can't see if it would hurt.
Yeah. And I don't really see what we would lose there. And But in 2013, I decided that telling stories in Atlanta was enough for me. And here I am 8 years later, um, knowing that that's still true for me.
Yeah.
Um, and so if everybody I encountered on the West Coast was somehow just a monster, then I wouldn't want to play with them. Um, and but luckily that has not been my experience. And I found people that prioritize storytelling as much as any of my colleagues here.
It feels like the two things that come to mind for me is you found a place where you weren't shopping hungry.
Yeah.
Um, and you found a place where I ain't got nothing to lose.
Mm,
And do you feel that really benefited you?
absolutely. Absolutely. Hallmark got me into the Writers Guild. My first two jobs were non-union. Um, uh, I was paid compared to what I make now. I was paid a pittance for that first movie, but the first movie, when I was paid that, was the most money I'd ever been paid for writing anything ever.
Yeah.
And but now I'm WGA. I'm a union man. I have health insurance. Um, and I maintain my health insurance by writing, which is and and I was just approached recently, somebody doing an inquiry to see if I wanted to pitch for a TV movie, and then they found out I'm union and they couldn't use me, and so I recommended a couple other people instead, um, because what I did is a really great entry point for an experienced professional storyteller to transition. And I know a lot of experienced professional storytellers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we have to remind people who are listening to us, we are in Georgia, which is a right to work state. So it functions a little bit differently here sometimes. I was going to say, I was going to ask this specifically. You said 7 scripts. How many of them were, because it's one thing to be asked to, when they ask you to work on the script, what are they giving you? Are they giving you, a script that you are doctoring, or are you writing, like what happened with that first gig and what's happened since?
My Summer Prince was presented with a 2-page pitch document. Um, the was it was it the morning after My Summer Prince when they offered me Broadcasting Christmas?
I think so.
Yeah, we were still in Mississippi.
Yeah.
We of course had the premiere of My Summer Prince at my parents' house, and wrote
Like we have to make
there.
sure that's clear.
Yeah,
Like it's Topher's family. Yeah.
yeah. Gathered my cousin Bubba came from Louisiana with his husband and brought their big screen TV because they had the biggest TV. My cousin Fran had a giant Oscar out front. Do you
I
remember
remember that.
that? My Aunt Liz did original artwork. Like it was a thing. Okay. This was a family victory. And because unlike me having a show premiere off Broadway, me having a show on the Hallmark Channel was something my mother could brag about at church.
Yeah.
And they would understand it. And so it was, yeah, we did great numbers in Central Mississippi that night. And um, Broadcasting Christmas was originally written by Michael Varrati, who became a very good friend. Um, by the time Hallmark picked up the script that became Broadcasting Christmas, Michael was already on another movie and couldn't do the rewrite.
Okay.
And so when they offered me that, um, I was very confused about the ethics of taking over another writer's work. So I just reached out to him on Twitter and I'm like, are you okay with me taking this job? And then it started a wonderful dialogue between him and me. Um, and so then Broadcasting Christmas shot the following year. Gift to Remember was based on a book. So I followed the same pattern. And even though when an author sells their book to Hallmark, it's a full release of the work. The author has absolutely no control over the eventual product. But it was a lovely Irish author named Melissa Hill. So again, reached out on Twitter and said, hey, I just got hired to adapt your book. What's important to you in this story? And knowing that I've got to take a 350-page book and condense it down to 85 minutes.
Right.
And so that started a great conversation. And then when we got a sequel on that, there was no sequel to the book. And so I went back to Melissa and I'm like, is there anything you had in mind if you revisited these characters? And at that point, and she posted on social media, she said, there's a sequel to the movie. The movie belongs to Topher Payne. And the sequel is continuing the lives of what he did with the characters. And I am so excited to see what he does.
Oh.
Just be kind, people. Just be gracious. It's amazing the ground you can cover. And then Roman Love was also based on a book. And then finally, with A Portrait for the Prince, which is its current title. There's not a chance in hell that'll be the title by the time it goes to screen. The titles change all the time. But Portrait for the Prince is mine. And
yours.
Mine. And so the story is of my own invention for once. And I'm very excited about that.
That's fantastic. That's congratulations on all that. I want to touch in on something else that maybe people are not aware of. And that is you do have a specific focus. And I don't know if it was something that developed with the Hallmark Channel or if it was something that developed before, but you do have a specific focus of creating roles that have an opportunity for women of a certain age.
Yes.
And also, I mean, it's not as if you have an agenda, but there are things that you, I don't know if you've accidentally done them or if you intentionally did them, knowing what you were doing with some of your scripts in regards to these characters and the interactions and the diversity that you've started putting into some of the Hallmark scripts.
We, under old management, there's there's new leadership at Hallmark as of this year, and a lot of the principles of the storytelling have been very specifically redirected, which is awesome. Prior to that point, it was a little more rigid structurally. One of the things was that writers were not allowed to identify the race or ethnicity of a character in the screenplay. And this was presented as an opportunity for the widest possible spectrum of casting possibilities.
Okay.
What it resulted in was the whitest possible spectrum of casting possibilities.
Right.
By not specifying race or ethnicity, no one in casting felt it was incumbent upon them to consider non-white actors, basically.
Well, I mean, and I think whether and I don't think it's intentional. I think again it's a systemic idea of picturing the stories.
White is the baseline.
Right.
And
it's a natural thing to go to.
Mm-hmm. And beyond that, market research had shown that if a white viewer stumbles upon a scene in a film or TV show where two BIPOC actors are in a two-shot, they assume that the overwhelming majority would assume that this is programming for a targeted audience that is not them. And there were some people that really took that to heart and chose not to challenge the viewer and instead really leaned into that misapprehension.
Right.
And I don't doubt the validity of that study. Look at what TV is and was, you
Right.
know. I'm sure that that is exactly viewer habits of an average white TV viewer.
Right.
The question is,
I
as
think
I said in that meeting,
it's of any specific, but yes, specifically, yes. Keep going.
but as I said in that meeting, what do you want your audience to take away? Like, what are you trying to do for them?
Right.
Because if all you're doing is reinforcing their existing worldview, why are you asking for their time? And so in Gift to Remember 1, I wrote a character named Mrs. Henley, and our we got the amazing Tina Lifford. She lives here in Atlanta part-time working on Queen Sugar. And she's brilliant and wonderful and just like this, so magnetic on screen. And she was playing the magical mentor role, which is sometimes a person of color, sometimes not, but always present in a Hallmark movie. But I gave the magical mentor a job and her own romantic subplot. And my producer and I fought hard to keep that in, and then ended up being one of the most popular aspects of the movie. So in the sequel, she was promoted to supporting lead, and she was now the A story. And because the nice young couple had gotten together in the first movie. And so in the second movie, they were already together. I wasn't looking to break them up. And so she became the focus. And then she had an extended family, which meant she had a nephew, she had a brother, she had a sister-in-law, which is jobs for more Black actors. And all we were doing was a natural extension of the storytelling. That's all it was. There was no agenda there beyond, aren't we lucky to have Tina Lifford in this movie? And then she was so solid that, of course, we put her front and center in the next one.
Right.
And so particularly prioritizing stories for mature women.
And let's be very specific here, because I
Mhm.
don't think like we have to like, I don't want to play with the language. We're
Mhm.
talking about roles for women 40 and over, which is kind of ridiculous that
Yeah.
this is a challenge,
Yeah.
right? So 40 and over when we're talking about mature women.
Yeah. And as a
Listen.
playwright, when I was not paying anybody any money to do my scripts, um, there was a talent pool of very, very experienced actresses who had a lot of downtime every season.
Yeah.
And they would all go and audition for the same 6 roles around town. 6 actors would book those gigs. Everybody else would have a lot of downtime. And they were generous enough to support my storytelling. I fell in love with their voices. I started writing for their voices, which then creates more roles for women in their age group.
Right.
And so it was it was not an act of generosity on my part. It was an act of generosity on theirs that made that happen. And I was just responding to the experienced talent pool that was willing to help me develop as a writer. I
I mean,
don't.
here's the deal. It's like you can say, and I hear you on that, but also there are a lot of other people that would have been given the same opportunity that you were being given that would not have taken it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's why they're not working?
Go on.
You can you can keep imagining a perfect set of circumstances, and you can spend a dozen years saying, why can't I get produced out of town? Why can't I get produced out of town? Or you can embrace what is available to you, find what makes it unique, and improves your work as a storyteller.
Yeah.
Consider where those unique experiences will make you necessary elsewhere. For me, that was the fucking Hallmark Channel. I never saw that one coming.
Well, I mean, and I always still love your story when you flew out to LA, because this was big for all of us, right? We're all friends, we're all in the same circle, and you're like, I'm taking meetings, and it was like, yay! And you even talked about the fact that like when you did some of the lunch meetings, you were the only one that would order bread.
Yeah.
And
Oh God. When I went to LA, I did not have enough money to pay for all of my ride shares from meeting to meeting to meeting, because I had so many meetings. And so I would have to figure out which ones I would drive to and which ones I would walk to. Scott got so mad at me that I did not tell him that at the time, because he would have ordered me a damn lift. But I walked, oh God, what was it? From West Hollywood to Burbank. It took me like 4 hours, and I was wearing corduroy pants, and by the time I got to Disney, or wherever I was, by the time I got there, my legs had been rubbed raw, and and the meeting still went okay, but I was in agony. Oh God.
I knew that part. I do remember you going, there was just a constant balance of like watching the rates go up and you going, okay, so I have to make the meeting by this time, but I don't have the money in the account for this, and I need to
it was a lot of, you can let me out here. Yeah. Where I'm like, oop, we hit $25. I have to get out of the car. Yeah.
I mean, and so it's interesting to think about, like, those are the investments that we make. But I also remember when you said that you wanted to meet with Hallmark, and that you that was the meeting that you enjoyed the most. Like, you enjoyed all of them, you learned from all of them, but that was a meeting that you went in with a different goal, and then it got you here.
I went in, and I hope, if I could impress anything upon any stranger overhearing our conversation right now, you got to know how you're the solution to somebody else's problem. I have, I joke a lot about it, but it isn't a joke. I don't have professional insecurity. My personal life is a disaster. But
I was thinking when we were talking about 2013 and then thinking about what's going on, I was like, oh my gosh, if only there was an understanding of the balance of everything that was happening at that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see that, and I think it's interesting because there is something about knowing your self-value, and it's and I of course am like, well, shouldn't you know, if you have your self-value in your personal life, then most likely that's secured in your professional life, but that is not
no, that's not
sometimes,
unfortunately, not how humans work. Yeah.
So but that is, I mean, when you say those words, be the solution to someone's problem. I mean, I think you and I exchanged one time that one of the things that we share is that I just want to be worth the trouble, man. Worth the trouble. I want to be worth the trouble for whatever I am.
My scripts are always late. Always.
Yeah. This is something. Yeah.
And I know it's gonna be late, and we do the delicate dance of them sending a text, and they're like, how's it going? And I'm like, you'll have it tomorrow. And we all know I'm lying. And
that's even if you respond. Like, that's the other part.
Even if I respond, yes. And so I just try to be worth the trouble. And I was, except for that one producer who asked for her money back.
Sometimes that happens. I know that we are, I know that we were told that we don't have to end on the dot, but I also know that your time is valuable. And
Yeah, I'm in
no,
Christmas pitch season.
yeah, take me through or take us through
Mhm.
what a current day looks like for you or has looked like for you through the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera.
I, I've been working from home for several years now. Pandemic definitely shifted the experience of that.
Mhm.
Um, and because I was still balancing out with doing a lot of theater at night.
Right.
And and so the pattern I fell into, because the nice thing about having West Coast bosses is your phone doesn't start ringing till noon. And um and then, oh God, when they were shooting Broadcasting Christmas in Connecticut, and all of a sudden they were in my time zone, and I'm like, I've lost my mornings. But and so mornings are for me and for life stuff. That's when I call my mama. That's when I get caught up with friends. That's when I paint my kitchen cabinets. Um, and then noon is when my workday starts properly. I have a rule that I've implemented of late in the last few weeks that's worked really well for me. Um, all I have to do is write 200 words of anything. It can
In any
be,
form.
yeah, take any form, but just keep generating material. And that stuff will work its way in many, many surprising ways. Right now we're in Christmas pitch season, which is February, March. So we're about to close out on Christmas pitches. Those will get greenlit, based on a pitch that's generally 2 to 3 pages. I write mine like short stories. Um, everybody writes those differently. Synopses are very kind of based in what the writer's individual voice is and what their comfort is in presenting an idea. So I just write it like a short story, and um, turn that in. That'll get thrown into the mix with a whole lot of networks because everybody does Christmas now.
Right.
And if anybody grabs it, then the next step would be pairing me with a producer. Um, and then we would go to script on it. And you get 2 drafts and a polish on your contract. At the end of that, if there's still work to do on the script, they may extend and offer another polish, which is great. That means more money for you. Um, or if you haven't gotten it where they want it after 2 drafts and a polish, polish meaning you can change dialogue, but not structure.
Right.
And but after
the polish is not the time to be like, and now a cousin.
exactly. And oh my God, he was dead the whole time. And the if you haven't gotten it where you need it after 2 drafts and a polish, then that's where you could be replaced by another writer. Or you may have, as I experienced on my second movie, you may have moved on to another gig and another writer is brought in because you're not available to do the next polish.
Right.
But then on Broadcasting Christmas, I convinced them to let me do a complete rewrite. And which I have done every time they brought me in.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, every time I hear you, you're like, you get a script and you're like, they wanted me to just do this, but there's no way it's going to work. I have to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I get inspired because I know how to be the solution here. And I just just like watching Guys and Dolls, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that, but like better and by me. And
I was just about to be like, it's like the guys and dolls thing that has stayed with you since the age of 11. Where you're like, oh, I can do this just better. I just do this better. Topher, thank you so much for letting me, like, Linda Burns, letting me come in and interview and sit with me and talk to you, even though we're friends and all of that. I appreciate it.
No, I am so grateful for this opportunity.
I appreciate you trusting me because, there's a lot of stuff I know that I could have just like thrown out questions.
I can leave this room anytime I want. I mean, oh no, the cat stepped on the computer, and then I'm just
Topher. Yeah, that's true. Thank you very much. Is
Thank
there
you.
anything else that you say to anyone at the annual conference before we go?
Yes. I cannot help you get your movie produced. I love you. I'm so glad that you're writing a movie. I'm so glad that you have a perfect Christmas movie. I'm so proud of you. I cannot help you. But IMDb is an amazing thing. And go look at the producers of TV movies that match where you think yours should be. And they're all on Facebook, especially associate producers. They're all on Facebook. Stalk them. Feel free, because those people make movies. I don't make movies. I write movies. And you need to talk to people who make movies, and they are looking for content. They are.
Great. I just want to say to everybody who tuned in so much. Thank you, Linda, for trusting me to do this and trusting us to not misbehave for 90 minutes. And thank you, guys.